The twin suns of Kepler 442 cast their warm light across the endless fields of New Eden. Golden wheat swayed in the gentle breeze, while cornstalks stood tall and proud in perfect rows. The air smelled of fresh earth and growing things. It was harvest season on the colony, and everyone was busy. Sarah Chun wiped the sweat from her forehead as she walked between the grain storage buildings. She was not like the other colonists. While they wore simple farm clothes, she still moved like a soldier. Her eyes always checked the horizon. Her hand still reached for a weapon that was not there. 15 years ago, Sarah had been Colonel Chun of the Earth Defense Force. She had fought in 3 wars and commanded a battle cruiser. Now she was just Sarah, the farm coordinator. She helped plan which crops to plant and where to store the grain. Most days she liked this better than war. The farming colony of New Eden was home to 50,000 humans. They had come here to grow food for the expanding human territories. The planet was perfect for farming. The soil was rich. The weather was good. There were no dangerous animals or poisonous plants. It was peaceful. Sarah stopped at the central grain silo and looked up at its tall metal walls. To most people, it looked like a normal storage building. But Sarah's trained eyes saw other things. The walls were thicker than they needed to be. The foundation went deeper than grain storage required. Small details that nobody else noticed. "Sarah!" called a voice behind her. She turned to see Marcus Webb jogging toward her. Marcus was 25 years old and had been born on New Eden. He had never seen Earth or any other world. To him, this farming colony was the whole universe. He operated one of the big harvesting machines in the southern fields. "The eastern sector reports are ready," Marcus said, handing her a data pad. "Corn yield is up 12% from last year." Sarah smiled. Marcus was a good worker, but he was too trusting. He believed the colony was just what it appeared to be. Like most of the younger colonists, he had never known war. He thought peace was normal. "Good work," Sarah said, taking the pad. "How's your harvester running?" "Great. Though sometimes I think it has too many buttons and controls for just cutting corn." Marcus laughed. "Dr. Rodriguez says all the extra systems are for soil analysis and crop optimization. Pretty fancy for farm equipment." Sarah nodded but said nothing. She had seen military mechs with fewer control systems than Marcus's harvester, but Marcus did not need to know that. "Not yet." As Marcus walked away, Sarah continued her daily inspection. She passed the irrigation control station where Elena Vasquez was checking water flow to the northern fields. Elena was a smart woman who had come to New Eden 5 years ago. She was an expert in atmospheric processing and weather control systems. "How are the weather patterns looking?" Sarah asked. Elena looked up from her screens. "All normal. Though I sometimes wonder why we need such advanced atmospheric processors for a simple farming colony. These machines can do a lot more than just control rain for crops." "Maybe the colony planners wanted to be extra safe," Sarah said, but she knew the real reason. Those machines could do much more than make rain. They could create storms, fog, or even change the air pressure across large areas. Very useful tools if someone ever attacked the colony. Sarah walked to the edge of the main settlement. Beyond the farms, she could see the defensive grid stations. To the colonists, these looked like communication towers and weather monitoring stations. They were scattered across the planet in a pattern that seemed random but was actually very carefully planned. Old habits made Sarah count them. 12 major stations, 43 minor ones. Each one disguised as something harmless. Each one hiding capabilities that could surprise any enemy. Who thought New Eden was defenseless? The afternoon sun was getting lower when Sarah reached her office in the converted grain silo. Her workspace was simple. A desk, some chairs, filing cabinets full of crop reports. But hidden behind a false wall was her real office. The one with military communication equipment and tactical displays. The one that showed her what was really happening in this sector of space. Sarah pressed her hand against a hidden scanner. The wall slid open silently. Inside, screens showed the positions of ships throughout the local star systems. Most were cargo vessels and passenger transports. Normal traffic for a peaceful farming world. But lately there had been other ships. Military vessels moving in patterns that made Sarah's old instincts wake up. The Zephyrian Empire was expanding their territory. They had been conquering human outposts in the Outer Rim for months. Each victory made them bolder. Sarah studied the latest intelligence reports. The Zephyrians were crystalline beings who lived for conquest. Their ships were powerful and their tactics were brutal. They showed no mercy to colonies that resisted. Most human settlements surrendered rather than fight. The report said the Zephyrian fleet was getting closer. 3 systems away, then 2. Now they were in the next system over, crushing a mining colony that had tried to evacuate. Sarah touched a control panel. Across New Eden, hidden systems began running diagnostic checks. Weapon systems that had been disguised as farm equipment tested their targeting systems. Shield generators hidden under grain silos charged their power cells. Defense satellites that looked like weather monitoring stations checked their missile loads. Everything was ready. It had been ready for 15 years. Outside her hidden office, the colonists went about their evening routines. Children played in the streets between the farm buildings. Families gathered for dinner, talking about crop yields and weather forecasts. Young couples walked hand in hand through fields of grain, watching the sunset. They had no idea what their colony really was. They had no idea what they had been trained to do. To them, operating a harvester was just farm work. Managing atmospheric processors was just weather control. Following the daily work schedules was just efficient farming, but Sarah knew better. Every farmer on New Eden had been carefully selected. Every piece of farm equipment was actually a military system. Every daily routine was actually combat training in disguise. The colony had been designed from the beginning to look like something it was not. The Zephyrians would see what they expected to see. A peaceful farming world full of soft civilians who would surrender without a fight. An easy target to conquer. Before moving on to bigger, more important human worlds. They would be wrong. Sarah closed the hidden office and returned to her simple desk. She picked up reports about grain storage and crop rotation schedules. Normal work for a normal farm coordinator on a normal agricultural colony, but her mind was on other things. How long before the Zephyrian fleet arrived? Would the colonists be ready when the time came? Would 15 years of hidden preparation be enough? Outside, the twin suns set behind the grain fields. The first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, alien warships were coming toward New Eden. Their commanders thought they were approaching an easy victory. Sarah Chin smiled grimly as she filed the crop reports. The Zephyrians had studied human colonies. They knew about Earth's military bases and fortress worlds. They had learned to avoid strong targets and pick on weak ones, but they had never encountered anything like New Eden, a weapon disguised as a farm. A military base hidden in plain sight. 50,000 soldiers who thought they were farmers, trained in combat techniques they believed were agricultural procedures. The colonists went to sleep that night thinking about tomorrow's harvest. Sarah went to sleep thinking about tomorrow's battle. Both groups were preparing for the same thing, even though only one of them knew it. In the quiet darkness of New Eden's farmlands, hidden systems hummed softly as they completed their final preparations. Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire prepared for what they thought would be an easy conquest. Neither side knew that in a few days, this peaceful farming colony would change the course of an entire war. The Zephyrians thought it would end at New Eden with a simple surrender. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The alarm in Sarah's hidden office woke her at 3 a.m. Red lights flashed on the tactical display. Long-range sensors had detected something at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Something big. Sarah jumped out of bed and ran to her secret command center. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panels, bringing up detailed sensor readings. What she saw made her blood run cold. 12 massive ships hung in space at the system's edge. Each one was over 2 kilometers long, with crystalline hulls that glowed with a soft blue light. Around them, 40 smaller vessels moved in perfect formation like deadly fish swimming in dark water. The Zephyrian Empire had arrived. Sarah activated the colony's emergency communication system. Across New Eden, hidden speakers in every building quietly came to life. Only she could hear them through her secure earpiece. The colonists would sleep peacefully for a few more hours. "Command 1 to all stations," Sarah whispered into her microphone. "Code Yellow. The package has been delivered. All units prepare for possible activation." Across the planet, other hidden systems responded. Men and women who the colonists thought were just senior farmers quietly acknowledged the signal. They were the only ones who knew the truth about New Eden. They were the ones who would guide the others when the time came. Dr. Elena Vasquez answered from the atmospheric processing station. "Weather control confirms readiness. All systems green." Marcus Webb's supervisor, someone the younger man knew only as Tom from equipment maintenance, reported from the vehicle depot. "Harvest fleet ready for deployment. All operators current." On training. One by one, Sarah heard from every hidden command post on New Eden. 15 years of preparation were about to be tested on the lead Zephyrian ship. Admiral Kethril studied the readings from New Eden. The planet looked exactly as their intelligence reports had described. Agricultural settlements scattered across 3 continents. No orbital defenses, no military installations. Just farmers growing food for the human expansion. Kethril was young for a Zephyrian admiral. His crystalline skin was still clear and bright, not yet clouded by age and battle experience. This would be his first major conquest, and he wanted it to go perfectly. New Eden would be his stepping stone to greater victories. "Status report," Kethril commanded, his tactical officer. An older Zephyrian named Veltar manipulated the holographic display with his 4 arms. Colony population approximately 50,000 humans. No defensive satellites detected. No shield generators, no weapon emplacements. Surface readings show only agricultural equipment and storage facilities. Any ships in the area? 3 cargo vessels in orbit. All civilian transports loaded with grain shipments. They appear to be preparing to depart? Kethril nodded with satisfaction. The humans were already trying to evacuate their food supplies. They knew they could not defend this world. This would be even easier than he had hoped. "Open a communication channel to the planet," Kethril ordered. "All frequencies." In her command center, Sarah watched the incoming transmission request. She waited 30 seconds before accepting it. She wanted to seem like a surprised civilian, not a prepared military. "Commander," Kethril's image appeared on her screen. He was tall and thin, with skin that looked like living crystal. His 4 arms moved constantly as he spoke, and his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Humans of New Eden," Kethril announced. "I am Admiral Kethril of the Zephyrian Empire. Your colony is now under Imperial control. You have 12 hours to evacuate. Any who remain after that time will be considered hostile combatants." Sarah made sure her voice sounded scared and confused. "Admiral, please, we are just farmers here. We have no weapons, no military. Can you not simply leave us in peace?" Kethril's crystalline features shifted into what might have been a smile. "The Empire requires this world for strategic purposes. We are being generous by allowing evacuation time. Most colonies receive no such mercy." 12 hours is not enough time to evacuate 50,000 people, Sarah protested. "Our transport ships are small. They are designed for cargo, not passengers." "Then you should begin immediately," Kethril replied. "And the countdown starts now?" The transmission ended. Sarah sat back in her chair and allowed herself a small smile. 12 hours. The Zephyrians thought they were being generous. They had no idea they had just given New Eden 12 hours to prepare for war. Across the colony, the hidden command structure activated. Senior farmers began implementing emergency evacuation procedures that were actually combat preparation protocols. The colonists thought they were following disaster plans. In reality, they were moving into battle positions. Marcus Webb was awakened by his supervisor Tom at 4 in the morning. Tom looked worried and spoke urgently. "Marcus, we have an emergency situation. Alien ships have arrived in the system." "We Need to prepare the harvesting equipment for possible evacuation of critical personnel. Marcus rubbed his eyes. Evacuation? But these are just farming machines. They cannot carry passengers. There are emergency modification procedures, Tom explained, leading Marcus toward the equipment depot. We have never talked about them because we hoped we would never need them. But each harvester has hidden systems that can be activated in crisis situations. As they walked through the depot, Marcus saw other equipment operators being briefed by their supervisors. Everyone looked confused and scared. The younger colonists had never imagined their peaceful world could be threatened. Dr. Elena Vasquez received similar instructions at the atmospheric processing station. Her supervisor, Dr. Rodriguez, explained that the weather control systems had emergency defensive capabilities that could help protect the colony during evacuation. I do not understand, Elena said as Dr. Rodriguez showed her control panels. She had never seen before. These systems can do much more than control weather. What are all these weapons targeting displays? Safety features, Dr. Rodriguez said quickly. The original colony planners included them in case of hostile wildlife or natural disasters. We have never needed them before. Elena was confused, but she trusted Dr. Rodriguez. He had been her mentor since she arrived on New Eden, if he said. These systems were for protection. She believed him. All across the colony, similar scenes played out. Young colonists who thought they knew their equipment discovered hidden capabilities. Grain storage silos revealed concealed elevator systems. Communication towers extended additional antenna arrays. Even the small transport vehicles that moved. Cargo between farms showed new control interfaces. The colonists thought they were preparing for evacuation. They had no idea they were preparing for battle. In space, Admiral Kethril watched the activity on New Eden with satisfaction. His sensors showed increased movement around the colony settlements. The humans were clearly panicking and trying to organize some kind of evacuation. Veltar, what is the status of their cargo ships? Kethril asked. The older Zephyrian checked his displays. 2 of the 3 vessels have departed the system. The third appears to be loading additional passengers. They are clearly trying to evacuate as many people as possible. Good, let them go. We want word of our conquest to spread. Fear is a useful weapon. Veltar manipulated the holographic display to show a closer view of New Eden's surface. Admiral, I am detecting some unusual energy readings from the planet. Kethril looked at the data. What kind of readings? Power spikes from various locations. The humans claim they are shutting down agricultural systems for evacuation, but the energy signatures are ... strange. Strange how? Veltar hesitated. The patterns remind me of military installations preparing for combat. But that is impossible. Our intelligence clearly states this is only a farming colony. Kethril dismissed the concern with a wave of his arms. You worry too much, old friend. The humans are probably just activating emergency systems. Maybe backup power for their evacuation efforts. But Veltar was not convinced. He had fought against humans before, during the border conflicts 20 years ago. He remembered their ability to make the impossible seem ordinary, to hide strength behind apparent weakness. Admiral, perhaps we should approach more carefully. The humans are known for surrendering when faced with superior force. Kethril interrupted. This is a farming colony, not a military base. Look at our sensor readings. Do you see any warships? Any orbital platforms? Any shield generators? Veltar looked at the displays again. The readings showed exactly what Kethril described. Agricultural. Settlements, farming equipment, grain storage facilities. Nothing that looked like military hardware, but something felt wrong. His long experience in war had taught him to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming warnings. On New Eden, Sarah Chun finished her final preparations. The colony was as ready as 15 years of secret planning could make it. Every system had been tested. Every operator was in position. Every hiding place was secured. The colonists still thought they were preparing for evacuation. Most of them would not learn the truth until the fighting started. But they were ready, whether they knew it or not. Sarah looked at the countdown timer on her screen. 8 hours until the Zephyrian deadline. 8 hours until Admiral Kethril learned what New Eden really was. She opened a secure channel to Earth Command, something she had not done in 3 years. 8 hours had passed since Admiral Kethril's ultimatum. Across New Eden, the colonists continued their evacuation preparations without knowing they were actually moving into combat positions. The morning sun climbed higher over fields that looked peaceful and normal, but underneath the surface, everything was changing. Sarah Chun stood in her command center, watching dozens of screens that showed every part of the colony. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. 15 years of waiting were almost over. Soon, the galaxy would learn what humans could really do. She activated the colony-wide communication system one final time. Her voice would reach every hidden speaker, every disguised command post, every secret system across New Eden. Attention all stations. This is Command 1. The time for pretending is over. All colonists are to be informed of their true situation in exactly 1 hour. Repeat, full revelation in 60 minutes. Prepare for Operation Harvest Moon. Marcus Webb was checking his harvesting machine when Tom approached him with a serious expression. The older man carried a sealed case that Marcus had never seen before. "Marcus, I need to tell you something very important," Tom said, setting the case down carefully. "Something about New Eden that you do not know. Something about yourself that you do not know." Marcus felt confused. "What do you mean?" "I have lived here my whole life. What could I not know?" Tom opened the case. Inside were military uniforms, weapons, and equipment that definitely did not belong on a farming colony. Marcus stared at them. In shock. "New Eden is not just a farming colony," Tom explained. "It is a military installation disguised as a farming colony." "You're not just a farmer, Marcus. You are a soldier who has been trained without knowing it." "That is impossible," Marcus said, backing away from the case. "I operate farm equipment. I harvest crops. I have never had military training." Tom walked over to Marcus's harvesting machine and pressed a hidden panel. The machine began to transform. Armor plating extended from concealed compartments. Weapon systems emerged from what had looked like grain-cutting tools. The entire vehicle reconfigured itself into something that clearly belonged on a battlefield. Marcus watched in amazement as his familiar harvester became a combat mech. "How is this possible?" "I have operated this machine for years. And every day you operated it, you were training to fight," Tom explained. "Every movement you learned for harvesting crops is also a combat maneuver. Every procedure you followed for maintaining equipment is also a weapon system operation. You are already a trained soldier, Marcus. You just did not know it." Similar revelations were happening all across New Eden. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared in shock as Dr. Rodriguez showed her the true capabilities of her atmospheric processing systems. "These machines can create storms, fog, even localized electromagnetic pulses," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "Every weather pattern you have learned to control is also a tactical weapon. Every atmospheric adjustment you have made was also combat training." Elena looked at the control panels with new understanding. The systems she thought were for managing rainfall could actually create blinding fog to hide troop movements. The equipment she used to regulate air pressure could generate electromagnetic storms that would disable enemy electronics. "But why?" Elena asked. "Why hide all of this? Why not tell us the truth?" "Because the best disguise is one that the people wearing it believe completely," Dr. Rodriguez said. "You could not pretend to be farmers if you knew you were soldiers. The deception had to be perfect." In the grain storage facilities, colonists discovered that the buildings were actually concealed military bunkers. The walls that looked like simple metal storage were actually armored barriers. The grain elevators were missile launch systems. The loading equipment was automated defense turrets. Young colonists who had never seen war found themselves putting on military uniforms and handling weapons they somehow knew how to use. Their muscle memory guided them through procedures they had never learned but had actually practiced every day of their lives. Sarah's voice echoed through speakers across the colony as she made the final announcement. Citizens of New Eden, this is Colonel Sarah Chun, your military commander. You are about to learn the truth about your home and about yourselves. New Eden is not just a farming colony. It is a forward military base designed to look like a peaceful settlement. You are not just farmers. You are soldiers who have been trained through your daily work. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Some colonists panicked. Others became angry at being deceived. But many more felt pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. All those times their equipment seemed too complex for simple farming. All those training exercises disguised as safety drills. All those procedures that seemed unnecessary for agricultural work. Now it all made sense. The Zephyrian Empire has given us an ultimatum, Sarah continued. They expect us to surrender without a fight because they think we are helpless farmers. They are about to learn how wrong they are. In 4 hours, we will show them what happens when you threaten humanity. Marcus stood next to his transformed harvester, now understanding why he had always felt like the machine could do more than cut grain. Tom helped him put on the military uniform that fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for him. How long have you known? Marcus asked. I have always known, Tom replied. I am not really your equipment supervisor. I am your commanding officer, Lieutenant Thomas Harrison, Earth Defense Force Special Operations. Marcus felt overwhelmed. And what am I? Corporal Marcus Webb, Mechanized Infantry Division. Your official rank was assigned when you turned 18, but you have been training for this role since you were 10 years old. Elena struggled to accept her new reality as she looked at the atmospheric control systems with fresh eyes. So every weather report I filed was actually intelligence gathering? Every storm you tracked was tactical reconnaissance, Dr. Rodriguez confirmed. Every atmospheric reading you took was military surveillance. You have been one of our most valuable intelligence officers for 5 years. And you? Who are you really? Major Elena Rodriguez, formerly of Earth Defense Force Atmospheric Warfare Division. I have been your commanding officer and your friend. The transformations continued across the colony. Farm vehicles became combat mechs. Irrigation systems revealed themselves as tactical communication networks. Storage buildings opened to show hidden armories and medical stations. Children who were too young to fight were moved to the deepest bunkers, protected by systems that had been disguised as root cellars and storm shelters. Older teenagers who had come of age during the deception found themselves assigned to support roles they had been unknowingly training for. In space, Admiral Kethril watched the activity on New Eden with growing concern. His sensors were detecting energy signatures that made no sense for an agricultural colony. Veltar, what are those power readings? Kethril demanded. The older Zephyrian studied his displays with growing alarm. Admiral, the energy signatures are consistent with military installations. Shield generators, weapon systems, communication arrays. This is not possible from a farming colony. Then the sensors must be malfunctioning, Kethril said, but his voice lacked conviction. Sir, I recommend we approach with caution. Something is not right about this world. Kethril looked at the tactical display. The deadline was approaching. His fleet was in position. Everything was ready for what should be a simple occupation of a defenseless world, but the sensor readings were telling a different story. Power signatures that belonged to military installations. Energy patterns that suggested advanced defensive systems. Movement signatures that looked more like troop deployments than civilian evacuations. Admiral, Veltar said quietly, I have seen these patterns before. During the border wars, this looks like a human military base preparing for combat. Kethril's crystalline skin flickered with uncertainty. But our intelligence reports clearly state this is only a farming colony. The humans would not risk civilian lives by placing a military base here. Unless, Veltar said slowly, the civilians are the military base. The idea was so outrageous that Kethril almost dismissed it immediately. But as he looked at the sensor readings again, a terrible possibility began to form in his mind. What If the entire colony was a deception? What if every farmer was actually a soldier? What if the humans had spent years building a military installation that looked like a peaceful farming world? That would be impossible, Kethril said, but he no longer sounded certain. Would it? Veltar asked. Humans are known for their deception tactics. They are known for making their enemies underestimate them. What better way to hide a military base than to make it look like something completely harmless? On New Eden, Sarah watched the final preparations through her command center. Screens. Across the planet, 50,000 people were learning the truth about themselves and their world. Some were still confused, some were frightened, but most were angry. They were angry at being deceived for so long. But they were even more angry at the alien fleet that threatened their home. This was their world. They had built it with their own hands. They had lived here, worked here, raised families here. No one was going to take it away from them. Marcus climbed into his combat mech, feeling the familiar controls under. Admiral Kethril stared at the human woman on his screen. Colonel Sarah Chun no longer looked like a frightened farmer. She wore a military uniform and her eyes held the cold confidence of a veteran commander. Something was very wrong here. What? Mistake? Kethril asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. You assumed we were helpless, Sarah replied. You assumed wrong. New Eden is not a farming colony, Admiral. It is a military installation. And you just declared war on 50,000 Earth Defense Force soldiers. Before Kethril could respond, his tactical officer Veltar shouted an urgent warning. Admiral, massive energy spikes across the planet's surface. Shield generators coming online. On New Eden, the grain silos that had stood peacefully in the fields for 15 years suddenly blazed with light. Powerful energy shields erupted from hidden generators, creating a protective dome over each settlement. The shields flickered and stabilized, showing strength that rivaled the defenses of major military bases. Impossible, Kethril whispered. Our sensors detected no shield generators. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Sarah said calmly. You saw farming equipment because that is what it was designed to look like. You saw grain storage because that is what the shield generators were disguised as. You saw what we wanted you to see. Kethril's crystalline skin darkened with rage and fear. You deceived us. We prepared for you, Sarah corrected. For 15 years, we prepared for this exact moment. Did you really think humanity would leave a strategic world undefended? Did you think we would build colonies without learning from every attack? Across New Eden's surface, the transformation continued. The grain silos opened like massive flowers, revealing missile launch systems that had been hidden inside. The irrigation channels that had carried water to the crops now bristled with concealed weapon emplacements. Even the farmhouses showed their true nature as fortified command bunkers. Marcus Webb felt his combat mech respond to his commands with deadly precision. The machine that had harvested corn for years now moved like a predator, its weapon systems targeting the Zephyrian ships in orbit. Around him, dozens of other farmers piloted identical mechs, forming battle formations they had practiced unknowingly during harvest seasons. All units, this is Harvest Command, Sarah's voice echoed through their communication systems. You have trained for this moment your entire lives. Show these invaders what human determination looks like. Elena Vasquez stood at her atmospheric control station, her hands moving across panels that now revealed their true purpose. With a few commands, she began generating a massive storm system above the northern continent. Thick clouds gathered, with unnatural speed, charged with electromagnetic energy that would disrupt enemy sensors and communications. Weather control to all units, Elena reported. Tactical fog deploying in 30 seconds. Electromagnetic storm will be ready in 2 minutes. Dr. Rodriguez, now revealed as Major Rodriguez, coordinated with other atmospheric specialists across the planet. Within minutes, they had created weather conditions that would give the human defenders every possible advantage. In space, Admiral. Kethril watched in horror as his easy target revealed itself to be a perfectly planned trap. The planet below him was not a farming world. It was a fortress that had been designed from the beginning to look harmless. How is this possible? He demanded. Our intelligence networks, our surveillance systems, our informants, how did we miss this? Veltar studied the tactical displays with growing respect for human deception. Admiral, I believe every piece of intelligence we received was accurate. This was a farming colony. The humans simply made their military base look exactly like what they claimed it was. But that would mean every farmer was a soldier. Every piece of farm equipment was a weapon. Every day of agricultural work was military training. They hid an entire army in plain sight. Kethril felt panic rising in his crystalline chest. His fleet had approached expecting to face frightened civilians with simple cargo ships. Instead, he was facing a coordinated military force that had spent 15 years preparing for exactly this battle. All ships, prepare for immediate bombardment, Kethril ordered. Destroy their shield generators before they can fully activate their defenses. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with devastating energy beams that could crack planets. Brilliant streams of destructive force lanced down toward New Eden's surface, aimed at what their sensors identified as the primary power sources. The beams struck the shield generators and scattered harmlessly. The energy shields held firm, absorbing impacts that should have vaporized entire city blocks. Warning alarms echoed through the Zephyrian ships as their most powerful weapons proved useless against the human defenses. Shields holding at 98%, reported the tactical officer monitoring New Eden's defenses. Their weapons are not penetrating. Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the enemy bombardment fail. Return fire. Show them what real weapons look like. Across New Eden, the disguised grain silos erupted with missile fire. Hundreds of advanced projectiles streaked upward, their trajectories calculated by targeting systems that had been disguised as crop monitoring equipment. The missiles moved faster than anything the Zephyrians had encountered. Using propulsion technology that Earth's military had developed in secret, the first wave of missiles struck Zephyrian escort ships with devastating effect, the crystalline. Hulls that had seemed so beautiful and graceful shattered like glass under the impact of human weapons. 3 enemy vessels exploded immediately, their debris scattering across space. Impossible, Kethril shouted. How do they have such advanced weapons? Our intelligence said human technology was inferior to ours. Our intelligence was wrong, Veltar replied grimly, watching more missiles launch from the planet's surface. These weapons are more advanced than anything in our fleet? The second wave of missiles targeted the larger Zephyrian ships. Admiral. Kethril's flagship shuddered as multiple projectiles struck its shields. Damage reports flooded in from across the fleet as the humans demonstrated that their hidden weapons were not just numerous, but devastatingly effective. On New Eden's surface, Marcus and his fellow mech pilots advanced across the former farm fields, their weapons tracking targets in orbit. The combat mechs that had spent years disguised as agricultural equipment now showed their true capabilities, firing precision shots that could hit spacecraft from planetary surface. Target the command ship, Marcus heard through his communications. Concentrate fire on the largest vessel. Marcus felt his targeting system lock onto Admiral Kethril's flagship. His training told him exactly how to lead the target, exactly when to fire for maximum effect. Training he had received without knowing it, disguised as lessons about timing and precision in crop harvesting. Elena's electromagnetic storm reached full intensity, sending waves of disruption through space around New Eden. Zephyrian sensors went dark as the interference made it impossible for them to target the human positions accurately. Their communication systems failed as the storm overloaded their crystalline technology. Admiral, we are losing sensor contact with half the fleet, Veltar reported. The humans have created some kind of interference field. Our targeting systems cannot lock onto their positions. Through the chaos of battle, human fighters launched from hidden bays scattered across New Eden's surface. The ships looked like simple cargo transports, but once in space they revealed advanced stealth systems and weapons that outclassed anything the Zephyrians had brought. The human pilots moved with practiced coordination, their attack patterns flowing like a deadly dance. They had trained for this battle in simulators disguised as cargo handling systems, learning to fly combat missions while thinking they were just moving grain shipments between storage facilities. Within minutes, the tide of battle had completely reversed. The Zephyrian fleet that had arrived expecting easy victory found itself outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely unprepared for the level of resistance they faced. Admiral Kethril watched in growing desperation as his fleet fell apart around him. Ship after ship reported critical damage or complete destruction. The human weapons seemed to anticipate his every move, striking with precision that suggested they knew exactly how Zephyrian technology worked. How do they know our weaknesses so well? Kethril demanded. Admiral, Veltar said quietly, I believe they have been studying us for much longer than we have been studying them. This entire colony may have been designed specifically to fight against our forces. Sarah Chun coordinated the battle from her command center, watching as 15 years of planning came together perfectly. Every system worked exactly as designed. Every colonist performed exactly as trained. The Zephyrian fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they had never seen coming. All units maintain pressure, Sarah commanded. Do not let any ships escape to report what they have learned here. The battle that Admiral Kethril had expected to last minutes was turning into a complete rout. His advanced fleet was being destroyed by farmers who turned out to be soldiers, using farm equipment that turned out to be military hardware, defending a colony that turned out to be a fortress. As his flagship shuddered under another missile impact, Kethril began to 10 minutes. That was all it took. Admiral Kethril's flagship drifted powerless through space, its crystalline hull cracked and dark. Around him, the wreckage of what had once been a proud Zephyrian fleet floated like broken glass against the stars. Of the 52 ships that had arrived to conquer a simple farming colony, only 7 remained. And though 7 were barely functional, Kethril sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the complete destruction of his forces. His crystalline skin had gone completely dark, the color of defeat and despair. He could not understand what had happened. It was impossible. Unthinkable. Status report, he whispered. Veltar, his faithful tactical officer, spoke in a voice heavy with shock. 45 ships destroyed or disabled. 7 ships remaining, all with critical damage. Casualty reports are ... extensive. How many survivors? Approximately 3,000 out of 22,000 crew members. Kethril closed his eyes. In 10 minutes, the humans had destroyed 90% of his fleet and killed 19,000 Zephyrian warriors. The battle that was supposed to be a simple conquest had become the greatest military disaster in the Empire's history on New Eden's surface. Sarah Chun watched the last of the enemy ships drift helpless in space. Her tactical display showed green across the board, all human systems operational. Old defensive positions secure. Casualty reports showed 0 deaths and only minor injuries from equipment handling, 0 deaths. They had destroyed an entire alien fleet without losing a single person. All units, cease fire, Sarah commanded. Secure all positions and prepare for prisoner recovery operations. Across the planet, the soldiers who had been farmers fell silent. Marcus Webb climbed out of his combat mech, looking up at the space where enemy ships had been minutes before. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the reality of what they had just accomplished. We did it, he said quietly. We actually did it. Tom Harrison, his commanding officer who had been his equipment supervisor, placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You all did more than that. You just changed the course of a war. Elena Vasquez shut down the electromagnetic storm she had created, allowing the natural weather patterns to return to New Eden's skies. The clouds began to clear, revealing the peaceful blue sky that had covered this world for 15 years. But something fundamental had changed. The secret was out now. The galaxy would never see New Eden the same way again. Sarah opened a communication channel to the surviving Zephyrian ships. Admiral Kethral's image appeared on her screen, but he looked like a different being entirely. The arrogant young commander, who had demanded surrender 12 hours ago, was gone. In his place sat a broken admiral who had seen his entire worldview shattered in 10 minutes. "Admiral," Sarah said, her voice neither cruel nor kind, simply professional, "do you wish to discuss surrender terms?" Kethral looked at her with what might have been respect or fear. "How?" he asked. "How did you hide all of this? How did you make an entire military base look like a farming colony?" Sarah considered her answer carefully. What she said next would be reported to the Zephyrian Empire and spread throughout the galaxy. Her words would become part of history. "We did not hide a military base, Admiral. We built a farming colony that was also a military base. Every person here really was a farmer. They grew real crops, raised real families, lived real lives, but they were also soldiers, trained through their daily work to defend their home." "But the deception—" "There was no deception," Sarah said firmly. "Everything you saw was real. The grain was real. The farming was real. The community was real. We simply made sure that our real farming colony could also function as a real military installation when necessary." Kethral struggled to understand. "Your people did not know they were soldiers? They knew they were colonists building a life on a new world. They knew they were farmers feeding the expanding human territories. They knew they were families creating a future for their children. The fact that they were also trained soldiers was just another part of who they were. This is impossible. No military force can function this way." Sarah smiled, and for the first time it was not grim or cold, it was proud. "Admiral, you have just learned something important about humanity. We do not separate our soldiers from our civilians because we do not separate our military from our lives. Every human colony is prepared to defend itself. Every human settlement is ready to fight for its survival. Every human civilian is a potential warrior when their home is threatened." The implications of her words hit Kethral like a physical blow. "You mean every human colony ... "Every single one," Sarah confirmed. "Some are more obvious about their defenses. Others are more subtle. But there is not a human settlement in the galaxy that cannot defend itself. There is not a human world that will surrender without a fight." Kethral's tactical display showed the locations of hundreds of human colonies throughout this sector. Of space, farming worlds, mining operations, research stations, trading posts. He had assumed they were all as helpless as he had thought New Eden was. Now he realized the terrifying truth. Every single one of those colonies might be exactly like New Eden, hidden fortresses disguised as peaceful settlements. Military installations that looked like anything but military installations. "How many?" Kethral asked weakly. "How many what, Admiral? How many of your colonies are like this one?" Sarah's smile widened. "That would be telling. But I will say this, the Zephyrian Empire has been very careful to avoid attacking human worlds that look like military bases. You have only targeted settlements that appeared helpless and defenseless." The blood drained from Kethral's crystalline features as he understood what she was saying. The Zephyrian Empire had been systematically attacking the most heavily defended human positions in the galaxy, thinking they were attacking the weakest ones. "This changes everything," Veltar whispered beside his admiral. "Yes, it does," Sarah agreed, having heard him through the open communication channel. "The galaxy is about to learn that humanity does not build defenseless colonies. We build communities that can defend themselves. We build homes that can become fortresses. We build lives that can become weapons when necessary." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Admiral Kethral, you came here thinking you would end the war by conquering a simple farming colony. Instead, you have started something much larger. Word of what happened here will spread throughout the galaxy. Every species that has considered attacking human settlements will now have to reconsider." Sarah opened additional communication channels, broadcasting on frequencies that would reach across the local star systems. Her words would be heard by cargo ships, passenger transports, and military vessels belonging to dozens of different species. This is Colonel Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force, broadcasting from New Eden. 10 minutes ago, the Zephyrian Empire learned what happens when you threaten human civilians. They arrived with 52 warships to conquer what they thought was a defenseless farming colony. 7 of their ships remain functional. She paused to let the numbers sink in. Across the galaxy, beings who had been considering the human expansion as a potential target suddenly began reconsidering their plans. Let this be a message to any species that thinks human civilians are easy targets. We are farmers, miners, traders, and settlers. We are also soldiers, defenders, and warriors. We do not separate these roles because we do not need to. Every human settlement is prepared to defend itself. Every human colony is ready to fight. You think you know where our military bases are because you can see our obvious fortifications, but you do not understand human strategy. Our greatest strength is not in our visible defenses. Our greatest strength is in making every world a fortress, every settlement a stronghold, every civilian a defender of their home. Marcus Webb listened to Sarah's broadcast from his position beside his combat mech. Around him, other soldiers who had been farmers were cleaning their weapons and securing their equipment. They had returned to being farmers again. But now everyone knew they were also soldiers. Elena Vasquez stood at her atmospheric control station, already beginning to restore normal weather patterns to New Eden. Tomorrow she would go back to managing rainfall for the crops. But she would also continue maintaining the tactical weather systems that had helped win this battle. Across New Eden, the colonists were returning to their daily routines. Fields still needed to be tended. Crops still needed to be harvested. Life on the farming colony would continue exactly as it had before. Except now the galaxy knew the truth about what human farming colonies really were. Sarah's broadcast continued, her words carrying across space to reach the leaders of every major power in the region. The Zephyrian Empire thought the war would end at New Eden. They thought it would end with our surrender. Instead, the war ends here with their defeat. Not because we are stronger than they are, but because they fundamentally misunderstood what they were attacking. They attacked farmers and found soldiers. They attacked a colony and found a fortress. They attacked what they thought was weakness and found it was strength in disguise. This is the human way. This is who we are. Admiral Kethril listened to every word, knowing that his failure here had doomed any chance of Zephyrian victory. The Empire could not conquer.